Decisions in a tight cycle. How to think about cash, tax, and risk in 2026. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Queensland Business Stories, brought to you by connectedplatforms.com.au. IT done right, done better. Today, we welcome Ben Hitchings, a director at Vincents, one of Australia's most respected accounting and advisory firms. He works with business owners and investors across Queensland and Australia on the practical end of finance, making numbers drive decisions. Thank you so much for joining us today, Ben, and thank you for coming and sharing your story. It's an interesting story and there's lots we can discuss. How are you going?
Really good. Thanks, Chris. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, look, it's an interesting area that you're in. I know you've got lots of different clients in lots of different sort of areas. I wanted to really look at, first of all, small to medium enterprise, right? Like when you sit down with someone right now, what are you looking at with them? What are the first few things off the top of your head that you sit down with them and discuss? I'd just be fascinated to know that.
Yeah, sure. So normally with a client, they're pretty good at looking at things like their profit and loss or the cash at bank or things like that. But I like to look at a balance sheet just holistically to start with a client. For me, it really paints a more of a fuller picture, if you like, of the business and how it's performing. Obviously, in conjunction with the P&L, cash at bank, all those sorts of things. It's always really important, for me anyway, to start with the balance sheet to see how that's going. You go, sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, do you find like that people are actually on top of that stuff? Like, do they?
No, definitely not. No, some are surprisingly very good at it, and for me, it makes my job a bit easier. And the client, if they're the more educated they are, the less work we have to do, and the easier there is to work with someone. But that's not to say I love working with all businesses, and particularly ones where they need that assistance. They're typically my favourite client because they need that support to help analyse, improve their business. But yeah, it's balance sheet's often underlooked because it doesn't tell them how much money or how much profit they've made. Because the balance sheet in conjunction with your P&L obviously helps provide a bit of a narrative around the cash flow and how the business is actually performing.
Do you think that, like, I wonder sometimes if people end up in these situations where they might be good at something, right? Like, so that's why they started the business. They were good at that area, but no one ever taught them. Like, I imagine you've got people coming to you who don't even know those terms. They're foreign terms to them.
100%. Yeah, it's not something that, like I do a lot of work with building trade construction clients. And to my point earlier, some are really good at numbers and understanding how things are working. Some are not so good, but they're very good at what they do. But it's often the case that business owners aren't educated with those things. And if they haven't received decent advice historically, it can be hard sometimes. So I typically find the education is lacking for sure.
Yeah, and to be fair, it's not taught anywhere. Like that's the whole point. I mean, you obviously go and get your qualifications later post school to learn this stuff. It's not automatically provided.
That's enough. Yeah.
A different angle, but just while I've got here, I want to ask about property because it's something that I've been thinking a lot about recently, and I sort of corner and hijack anyone who knows what they're talking about in this area just to get their take on it. That would obviously be part of what you're discussing with clients as well, property, commercial property, residential property, how that all fits in. I'm just curious to get your take on that at the moment because I've got some concerns that are sort of bubbling in the back of my mind about risks, more macroeconomic risks to the property market generally. How are you thinking about that and how are you working with the idea of property with clients?
Yeah, so we've got to be careful with the advice we provide to clients, particularly in relation to investments. So we can't give investment advice. We can absolutely advise on the tax implications in relation to property investment and structuring developments, those sorts of things. But yeah, from a personal perspective and how I see things happening, it's a bit, and what I'm actually saying to clients at the moment, it's not investment advice, but it's just advice around what I think should be considering is what the government are going to do with capital gains tax, if anything, come budget. There's a lot of noise, a lot of smoke, if you like, around reforms to the general discount available and maybe the number of properties people can own before there's certain different CGT discount percentages are affected. So it's tricky. I think there'll be any adjustment to that capital gains tax and the discount itself will affect property for sure. So I think the government's got a really tricky job of trying to challenging job rather, of how they sort of handle that, but it will impact it is my thoughts. So I'm sort of erring or saying to clients just to be cautious at the moment in relation to that, for sure.
And it ties in with what I was sort of saying before. You've got people who may not understand what a balance sheet is necessarily. It's an important thing that you'd be saying, well, you need to understand what's actually going on there. And then you've got these other factors at play, like what the government's doing, these macroeconomic factors that are going to impact on your business as well. There's a lot there. Like, it can be overwhelming, particularly people in that small, medium space. But how do you think about that from a tax planning perspective? I mean, you mentioned, we've got or potential things on the horizon that could make a difference. If we're in a high change environment like we seem to be in at the moment, how do you deal with that? Like, do you, I don't know, what strategies do you tell people to sort of assist them dealing with rapid change?
Yeah. So, I mean, I like to obviously inform clients. I like to meet with them as much as we can. So for most of my clients, we'll have a tax planning meeting in either towards the end of April or May, depending on what's happening in the type of business and what how complex it is. And with that, we typically look at the last 10 months of trading or thereabouts for the business, and then we can get an idea of what sort of tax liability they may be up for. But we also discuss things like contributions to superannuation from a tax perspective. And if there is any reform to CGT, as an example, we might be pushing some of these tax planning meetings back till after the budget announcements to see what impact that may have, if anything, to clients. But typically that's how we advise them is in this tax planning meeting. We also, throughout the year, publish newsletters, emails, social media, that sort of stuff around any sort of pressing or significant changes or things that are happening at a government level as well that may affect our clients. So we're sort of pretty good at educating throughout the year ad hoc as well.
And that is interesting. I've seen a trend, like obviously bigger businesses have CFOs, right? Chief Financial Officers. Yeah. So if you're operating a big business, you've got someone who's on top of all of that. And I think that's a trap from my perspective, and I might be wrong. You'll certainly have more feet on the ground on this and have more of a feel for it. But I feel like a lot of the smaller businesses really lack that dedicated person. And yes, they'll all have accountants, or most will have accountants that they go and see once a year to do their tax. But it's not the same thing. I don't think that's what we're really talking about here. It's that having someone who's across all this stuff that's going on to be able to actually provide meaningful advice on the journey and not just at that destination, not just June 30. 100%. How do you think about that? Because you do the CFO, like sort of the virtual CFO thing. It seems to be a trend that more businesses are picking up.
Definitely. Yeah, so we have a fractional CFO within the business that offers CFO support to a number of clients. We've also got a dedicated outsourced accounting, we call it, team that assists clients in that as a mini sort of, or a CFO, fractional CFO light service, if you like, that provides that monthly reconciliations, reporting, and the like of it.
I'm curious about, particularly on that CFO angle, like that extra advice. I think really where I'm heading with that is I just wonder about so many businesses that don't have the in-house expertise. I mean, we've identified that in everything we sort of talked about so far. There's all these aspects going on. How like, is it reasonable on small to medium business owners to say, well, you just have to keep on top of that? Or where's the line where you say you probably do need additional outside support to assist with that?
Yep. It's a tricky one because some clients really want to have that level of control, if you like, over their business and the visibility of the finances. So a lot of clients will have that CFO type role within their business, being the owners doing that. Where you draw the line is, I think, where they can't function as an owner and as a CFO. I think you've got to wear multiple hats in business. And if you can't dedicate your time in the right way, then that's where you need to start looking at outsourcing. I think from an outsourcing perspective, a CFO is someone easier to engage as opposed to another owner, or have someone in your business thinking as if they are an owner. So for me, it's where the support's required. So clients have asked me before, do we need to get a CFO? And so, well, what is it you're doing? Could you consider a decent finance controller as opposed to a full-blown CFO? Have you considered outsourced bookkeeping work, or hiring an internal accountant to assist the work, that sort of level? It depends on what they're after, and it does vary from client to client.
I'd just like to follow up on one bit you said there, like the difference between having a business owner as part of this. Like, that's fascinating to me, because do you find that sometimes you want someone who's not quite so close?
How do you mean, sorry?
Well, just to the business itself. Like, do you need that objective third party almost to make better business decisions?
But for sure, yeah. If you can, and that's probably where historically where we work businesses that haven't got that CFO or that what do you call it, like a removed CFO, if you like. That's where the advice, they'll come to us for that level of like question, if you like, and they'll objectively provide the advice, and they'll in theory follow that advice. So yes, it can work well, absolutely. I 100% agree with you. And the other thing business owners aren't aware of is what they don't know. So you don't know what you don't know. So it's having sometimes having a fractional CFO who is an expert at doing this come in, do some sort of finance function review, implement some different tech potentially, or some different systems and processes, and just create a number of efficiencies throughout the business may be really beneficial. And then again, as I said to you, if they don't know, they don't know. So it's important to have that level of openness, I suppose.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Just having, even if it is just fresh ideas, that little bit of creativity or different ways of thinking about it makes a whole lot of sense.
And there's so much tech out there. There's so much noise about AI and different softwares and all these things out there, and people get lost with flashy ads and flashy Facebook buddy posts. So it can be confusing. So any advice to anyone looking at that sort of stuff would be just to speak to people who've used it and implemented it successfully, as opposed to just going off a Facebook ad.
And I'd love to know more about that, because it's an area that I'm very focused on, this idea that you've got technology everywhere. We know AI, it's just getting stronger. We're expecting new releases that will be next level again, and they're already pretty impressive. And I wonder what your take is on that, because you've already highlighted, like, you've got some people who just want the shiny new thing. Is it coming in and impacting your business for starters, like the actual the back end of accounting and business advice itself? I'm interested in that, but also where you see that really assisting businesses that you're working with. Have you seen some real success cases there?
Yeah, okay. There is a lot out there, as I said to you before, and we're guilty of the same thing, getting bombarded with different AI and different tech and how to use it. Also, we're actually in the midst at the moment of going through a full tech stack review internally, so that's hopefully going to iron out a few of those issues. We haven't got full AI. We've got policies in place for sure. We're obviously restricted with the sort of AI we can use and how that operates throughout the firm, through obviously privacy issues and the level of information we have. So it's sort of quite restrictive on how we can use it. But we're certainly looking at ways, or the plan is to look at ways of how we can help streamline back-end processes, particularly when it comes to data transposition and that sort of system process improvement. I think is really important. And to be honest, that's where I think a lot of clients are seeing that benefit, is in that systems and process and improvement. I wouldn't say it's going to replace it. It's not replacing a whole lot yet. I dare say it will be. But that data transfer interpretation is really quite powerful. I think with some of the AI stuff available. Success cases, none pop to mind at the moment. I know so many clients are using it. It's quite funny. You'll get emails from clients who are actually just cut and pasted out of ChatGPT saying, "Can you help with this advice?"
Got those. It's got those
Same
to
client.
giveaway tells like the M dashes and
Yeah,
the you
yeah.
can tell.
The font hasn't even been changed. So I'd say a lot of people are still sort of hesitant to trust it. Would be my take on it. So they're using it a lot to ask a lot of questions and probably refine things and send communications and the like. But I don't think it's. I haven't got a test case. Sorry, mate, from somebody who's implemented it and
No,
used it
no,
successfully.
and that's
Yeah,
that's information in itself, right? Like that
yeah,
from what you've seen, people are still in that playing mode, and that seems to be consistent with a number of
mm-hmm.
people I've spoken to. You've got a spectrum certainly for people who are starting to get to that implementation phase, but probably playing around is enough at the moment to not be falling behind. Is the fact that you're actually playing in that
It
area
is.
and looking at what's
Yeah,
possible. Probably along a similar line of questioning, I'm curious about resilience and where you've seen businesses that have really struggled, I suppose, but also the ones that are shining over the last couple of
yeah,
years, because it has been a challenging business environment.
yeah.
What's the difference that you've noticed between the ones that are probably at that more struggle end and the ones that are really doing very well? Is resilience part of that? Because that's a question I'd like to sort of explore.
Yeah, resilience is certainly I would say a key characteristic of some of those businesses. That I think for me, though, the main thing, and something I've said for a long time, for 10 plus years, clients that are committed, clients that actually listen, take advice on board and action. I think 9 times out of 10 will get through most of these tough periods. Businesses that have good structure, good finance reporting, those sorts of businesses, again, in any sort of tough environment, they tend to come out top because they're planning, they're looking forward, they're aware of issues that affect their GP, so they're very focused on protecting their margin. And yeah, and for me, that's the main thing. Like, you've really got to make sure that clients know how to protect their margin and what they're doing to make sure that stays in place. So resilience is certainly a key. And I think if everyone sort of gave up at the first challenge in business, we wouldn't have too many business owners in Queensland or Australia. But commitment for me is probably the main thing, or the main key characteristic, if you like, for those sorts of clients.
And does that flow through when we've got situations like we have at the moment, where you've got the oil shock and war and things that are external factors that might not directly impact your clients' businesses in terms of what they're producing or what they're doing, but certainly peripherally are impacting when you've got staff who can't get to work because their trains are running late because they're packed because no one will pay. Yeah, there's lots of flow-on consequences. How are you finding businesses are dealing with these external shocks currently?
To be honest, it hasn't been huge yet.
Yeah,
I'm certainly aware of a couple of clients of mine that have had significant material costs increased by 5%. So the 5% squeeze on your margin, your gross margin's significant, my opinion. I would say, and also the building material costs obviously as well, significantly increasing. So they're probably the two main things I've seen so far. I haven't heard too much, or I haven't had too much interaction yet with clients that are having serious financial issues. But again, clients I'm working with are prepared for it, getting things in place like an overdraft in advance for something that's going to happen. Yep. So they're well and truly prepared. And those sorts of planning and having these discussions now before it becomes an issue in 6 months' time, I think is really important. So back to that point around having businesses, good systems and processes in place. Again, I'm confident that these businesses I'm talking about now will absolutely get through this unscathed as best possible.
So what happens when things go bad? Like obviously in that environment, you're saying, yes, we've got people set up, but I know litigation, disputes, other things that might not be external global factors, but are certainly unanticipated or can be unanticipated factors that come in and impact a business. How do you deal with those? Because that would be another area that I suppose, like you said, the overdraft, right? Like in the case of you've got some financial uncertainty, having that overdraft available to help you smooth
Yeah.
out costs during a particular period of time would make sense, but
Mm.
harder to do with unexpected litigation or disputes or things that could of that nature, I imagine.
Yeah. So two main ones we deal with, obviously shareholder disputes, where it's two business owners or multiple business owners having a falling out. And something I say to clients all the time when they're going into business with someone else is get a shareholders agreement. It's so important that it's a shareholders agreement, effectively setting out the rules of engagement for any of these sorts of unforeseen issues that may occur. It's so important that they have a shareholders agreement. You could be the best of mates going into this, or you could be brothers or sisters or relatives, whatever it is. It's so important to get shareholders agreement before these bad things happen or disputes happen. So you've got your rules, you can go through that, sets out values, it says what you can and can't do, and if things go worse, that's when it'll point you to how to deal with the next stage. So shareholders agreements super important. The next most common thing is obviously matrimonials as well. So we quite often deal with clients, husband and wife separate, and normally when that happens, it can normally, not always, but it can be quite obviously a highly emotive situation. So husband and wife arguing, it's hard then when you try to separate assets. So that's when I'll tend to get our commercial forensic team involved. We've got a couple of people that deal with matrimonials and deal with the mediation as well. So that's some really good client outcomes historically with getting those guys involved. They help with valuing the business and valuing the client's assets in entirety, and then mediating with the lawyers as well, saving tens of thousands of dollars easily in legal fees by actually sitting down with the lawyers and the husband and wife and assisting with that separation. It can be really quite powerful.
Yeah, because it's one of those, again, you don't know when you're going to need that, but having those tools available, or at least knowing they exist, I think for people who are just listening to you then going, oh, okay, there is actually a process for that, is probably a huge step forward for some people who didn't know how they would even approach it.
Exactly.
What about hiring and wages and that aspect of things as they sit at the moment? Because you've talked about, you've got the relationship with shareholders, but you've also got your staff and employee issues to deal with and costs to deal with. I wonder now, I mean, I'm quite worried with some of this AI angle that we do head down the path that it becomes increasingly volatile for staff and the whole process around staff and what that looks like. How are you thinking about headcount? How are you thinking about when's the time to get people internal versus external services? And has that changed at all in this current environment?
Yeah, I'd say it has for sure. And I think it's still quite early for me anyway. You have a really high level projection 5 years out, whatever it is. And we've done it internally with our business planning, if you like, strategy for the next 5 years, that headcount, in my opinion, will probably drop as AI technology increases. Just from a efficiency and what it is we're doing, we probably generate greater revenue per employee, which will obviously, as I said to you before, affect how much we have to employ at that level. I don't see it. Admin, I think, is going to be another area for most businesses, I think, where there's a level of automation and AI that's going to come in and again, with some of the systems and processes that are still being done largely with humans, I think some of that is going to naturally affect headcount in businesses across a number of client bases. Obviously, your trade type business, I don't think AI is going to be banging nails anytime soon, fixing
not until we get the offices, not until we get our robots everywhere.
Yeah. That's a little while off yet, so I'm not even thinking about that, but it's certainly a factor, certainly something to consider. It's probably again, looking for people that you're trying to hire, how they, it's not, again, a consideration in the minute, but I think it will be consideration in 12, 24 months' time, is that person's ability to use technology, I think, is going to become more and more important, and how they supervise people using technology. Again, it's such a rapidly changing thing, AI, at the moment. It's really, and something we're really conscious of, It's how it's being used and how it can be contained. So I think the hiring, we make sure that those people can confidently use that stuff and correctly use that stuff.
Yeah, and that's going to certainly change the dynamic of some hires. I think certain skill sets going to be in higher demand than they might have been in the past,
Just like
others not so much.
yeah.
If you could instill one discipline, because I'm sure you're dealing with lots of different people, and you just wish if they would just do one thing once every month, my life would be so much easier. What would that thing be for your clients?
And it's an overarching theme, but it's a message I say to a lot of people is know your numbers. And it's so important that clients sit down and actually know the numbers. If they don't know what something means, and this goes back to my point at the start of the conversation around the balance sheet, if you're not sure what something means on that balance sheet, either AI or give me a call or send an email. But you've got to know your numbers. So understanding, being able to interpret financial results is so important. So I say it to a lot of clients, and I say it to multiple business owners that they need to have some form of meeting. I would say no less than monthly, where you sit down, you close the books, you print your P&L, print your balance sheet. If you've got cash flow reporting, fantastic. Sit down and actually analyse it, review it. Where is it compared to budget? Why have your numbers changed? How they change, and understand what's happened. Because if you don't understand the actual results, it's really hard to pull levers in the future to affect or improve those results. So know your numbers is my catchphrase, if you like, mate.
And I think that would be a very valuable monthly skill or habit for everyone to develop. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and it can be it might be cumbersome to start with, while you get used to it, and by the time you're 12 months down, you become a seasoned pro. And
and that's the thing. I think sometimes people don't do things because they go, "I'm not an expert." So I don't know. That's too hard. But you're not asking for that. You're just saying, have a look. Like just put some time aside and just have a look, and you're going to be better next month than you were this month. That's how you develop these skills.
And it's quite enjoying to see people progress when you go through this being for class, and it might be 6 months later they're actually printing it. They've already printed it out. They've highlighted what they wanted to ask, and they're across the reasons as to why things are how they are, and it's quite pleasing to see.
That's very good. Look, last question to wrap this up. If you're looking out the next 12 months, are you optimistic? Are you a bit more cautious in areas? What's your sort of big picture view from your perspective, looking through the lens that you look through for businesses in Southeast Queensland?
I would like to think my wife might say something different, but I'm generally optimistic. I would say, depending on the environment, I'm always quite optimistic and have a positive outlook, I think, on where things are trending. There's always money to be made. There's always things to improve within business. Yes, we're going through a bit of a pickle at the moment with the conflict in the Middle East, but managed well, things are still ticking along. Things are still happening. We haven't stopped. So there's always opportunities. Always opportunities for growth and improvement. So I am optimistic. Definitely next 12 months.
Well, I think that's a great summary there, because you've given lots of useful advice that I think people across the business spectrum will be able to take from this. So I think that's really valuable. So thank you for that. Look, if people want to reach out to you personally to get in contact or to find out more about how you can assist, what's the best way to do that?
Probably on our website, to be honest, vincents.com.au, or I'm sure if you could find me on LinkedIn or just Google me, I'll pop up, no doubt. So more than welcome to reach out, happy to have a chat.
Look, really appreciate it, and I know our audience will as well, so thank you for that, Ben.
No, easy done, Chris. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
If you have a Queensland business story that our audience will be interested in, reach out. You can contact us at connectedplatforms.com.au. We'd love to hear from you. Also, we highly value any feedback on what you like or don't, so let us know that as well. And if you really love this content, please consider giving us a Google review. It makes a huge difference to our team. We'll be back next week with a brand new Queensland business story. So thanks everyone for watching, and let's stay connected.